Hi, guys. Hope you guys are doing all well. Welcome back to the Life in Motion podcast. We are currently interns at the University of Illinois, hoping to help early career professionals navigate through the workplace. So this episode is going to be a little bit different. We're going to focus on the topic of grief. And I'm your host, Noah, and then let's introduce the rest of the host.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nora.
Hi, I'm Amy.
Hi, I'm Haroon.
And I'm Kristin.
Awesome. So glad you guys are here to join us. First off, we're going to start off with the question. What comes to your mind when you think about the word grief?
Um, you want to go, Nora, or I can go too?
You can talk.
All right, cool. Well, when I think of grief, I honestly think of something that you kind of keep to yourself. You kind of try to deal with on your own. Something that's overwhelming. It's hard to talk about, and uh, honest, it's a thing that everybody obviously goes through throughout their lives. Everybody's bound to at least go through it a couple of times, and I always think about how weird it is that something that is so, it generally feels like something that we have to do alone is something that's so much better to do when you talk to other people about it. And honestly, that's what comes to my mind.
That's great. I totally agree with you. I think that a lot of people tend to struggle with like keeping it to themselves, which is understandable. I mean, it's like a really hard process that pe like everybody has to go through, like you said. I do also agree that it's important to try to talk to other people about it or like lean on your support system. I know that's like personally helped me in my grieving experiences, but Noah, when you ask the question of what comes to mind initially when you hear the word grief, I would say for me, like heartache automatically comes to my mind. I think it's just because like grief is just a very heavy process and it could really be like emotionally taxing on people. And I think that grief in general is just such an emotional roller coaster. Like there's so many different just processes and like emotions that people go through, whether it be happy or sad. So that's what I would say what initially comes to my mind.
Right,
I'd
that's
say I
equal.
also agree with that. Sorry, you can
Oh,
continue.
yeah, no, you're good. Amy, would you like to talk about what grief means to you?
Yeah, I was gonna say that when I think of the word grief, I also think of loss. And the way that I think about grief, I think about, well, how will you like navigate grief and what kind of systems will you use to pick yourself back up for the process of grief? And also, I wanted to talk about why did we choose the topic of grief today?
I think one of the reasons, partially just our internship is very correlated to that. We're working at a caregiving organization, and sadly, along with caregiving comes loss, like you just said. And grief is a really powerful emotion that comes both with first diagnosis, I would say, and then the end stages of life. So it's a really important topic to talk about, like everyone else has said so far.
Yeah, especially for our particular podcast because we really focus on just like um having early career professionals gain confidence and we couldn't imagine somebody also going through grief while entering like a new phase of their life with like maybe starting a new job or even just like being in like a new university or school or just even continuing school. I mean, grief comes at any stage of somebody's life. It's not predictable. You can't plan for it. So it's just really important that we wanted to be able to talk to everybody about this topic just because it is a really hard thing to go through and we recognize that. So we want to be able to give as many tips as we can or share our own experiences just to hopefully help out people in general, but especially somebody maybe in a new environment because it would be hard to challenge both or hard to navigate both challenges at once. So, yeah.
Yeah, those are some awesome, great points you guys brought up. I would like to ask you guys, have you guys dealt with any grief in your personal or professional life? And if you don't mind telling us any experiences where you dealt with grief.
Yeah. So I think grief's come up in a lot of different ways. And obviously, I think grief, there's a lot of levels to it too. I think there's like things like losing a family member, losing a loved one, and then there's just maybe not getting accepted to a program you wanted to get into, or even I feel like messing up on a big test that meant a lot to you. I think these are all kinds of forms of grief. And honestly, everybody's gonna have to deal with all of these things. Um, and in my opinion, like the thing that stood out to me most is losing loved ones because honestly, tests and professional life, it always feels like there's a second chance, like, oh, there's another exam, you can apply again, and things of that nature. But losing a loved one, like a grandparent or a close cousin or even like a friend, um, that always stings a little bit more. And in my experience, I've had some family members, some cousins of mine that were like somewhat my age, maybe a little bit older. And dealing with that is kind of what's most difficult because you don't know how to. And I think that's why it's really important that we address it today.
I mean, yeah, thank you for sharing your like opinion and thoughts on grief. I agree with you that there's like different like scales to this. Like it could be like, you know, something more on the smaller scale of like a test or something that you've like failed at and how to come back from that. But then it's like losing a loved one is just a different level and like a definitely like a more extreme and intense level of grief. I would agree with that. And on that note, yeah, like I have definitely been in like the grieving process. I mean, I think that there's not like a certain even time period of grief. I my grandmother passed away 3 years ago, but I definitely am still grieving. There's definitely like good days, bad days, some days where like I think about her a little bit more and get more emotional and it's harder to talk about her, but other days where I kind of channel those feelings into something more positive where I want to like share her story, share her legacy. So yeah, it's definitely really challenging process. I would say specifically for me. Um, I like experienced her loss during my freshman year of college. So that was like when I was navigating to how to like live life in a new environment and I was like alone. I mean, obviously I had like friends around me, but I didn't have any of my family here with me. So it was really hard to like stay here and like go do my day-to-day work when like my family is caregiving for my grandmother. She, you know, stayed in our home. So it was hard like taking care of her all the way up until I had to start school and then knowing that I'm here and like I know this is like what I have to do here, but I did feel guilty in a way where I like wasn't back home to like help my family like take care of my grandmother. And there was like a lot of like um large scale decisions that my family had to make in terms of like how to care for my grandmother, just like the course of her life, like how things are going to look for her future and stuff like that. So it was hard to not be there to like be able to support my family, I felt like, but I tried my best in like making as many calls as I could or just trying to support, I guess, virtually. But then when I experienced the loss of her, I think that it was really important for me to lean on my support system. My sister was a really impactful in like helping me navigate like school because this also happened during my final exam season too. So it was really stressful. And yeah, there were some unfortunate things like having to send emails to professors on the way to my grandmother's funeral and like stuff that like is really unfortunate for somebody to have to go through. And I don't wish this on anybody else, but there's definitely ways that we can talk about later that we can navigate this harsh journey. But I don't know if anyone else wants to share their grieving experience, but that's a little bit about mine.
Thank you for sharing your grieving experience. I feel like I also have a similar one with my grandmother, but she's still alive, luckily. But around last year, because I was too busy with college and I was the main caregiver for my grandmother because my mother wasn't very involved in caring for her, she had to be moved back to Brazil, which is her original country that she used to live in when she was younger, for my aunt that lives there to take care of her and her cousins and their children as well. So the kind of guilt that I felt last year and still now even is just if I was home, I could be taking care of her, could do so much more, but being virtual and away from her and like the distance isn't always helpful. And sometimes the lesser of two options is the best option in the end case. But I think grief in this way, like while she's still alive, is just her presence that I'm missing. And and I think grief comes in different ways. It's still here, it's still there, and it's good that we're definitely talking about this in this situation.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's so interesting. Um, I think it's definitely common to feel that feeling of guilt, like, am I doing enough? But I think it's also important to realize that like we have to prioritize ourselves. Like in your case, like, you have like an education, you have to like kind of still stick to your day-to-day life. And I can't imagine like the guilt that you're experiencing, and it makes sense, but I think it's really important to like still prioritize yourself above all. Know that like you are here for like your own separate mission of like going to school and like creating, setting up a great future for yourself. So I hope your grandmother is doing well, and I hope that she's getting like great care somewhere else. Know that she's okay, and hopefully she'll continue to be okay. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I also wanted to talk about my story. I know like I'm kind of like Amy, where I haven't had anyone really like immediate pass away that I was close to, but I think what's really important is like while they're here, even though maybe like we're still in college, I feel like this year I've been prioritizing like calling my loved ones as well as like doing more activities with them when I go home, just to like, build that connection as well as like strengthen our relationships, because I think it's really important. And once grieving happens, obviously, um, you're gonna feel down, but you're also gonna enjoy the moments you had with them, and it makes you feel better and that much more satisfied that you spent as much time and effort as you wanted to, and always being there for them. So I think that's really important. And obviously, we are busy college students, and especially once we get into the workforce, it's going to be even more busy. But just reflecting and prioritizing time with like your immediate loved ones is something that I really have tried to prioritize, and I think it's really important for college students as well. But let's move on to our next topic. What do you guys do in terms of grief? Like, how do you guys cope with grief, and what are your favorite things you guys like to do when something bad happens, whether it be like a loved one dies, or like you do bad on a test, or you don't get that internship? What do you guys like to do?
I think something that really works for me is just spending time with loved ones that I have, if it's family or friends. Um, Obviously, kind of, especially if it's dealing with loss, it sucks because you've you feel this absence in your life, but it's kind of helpful to remember that you still have a lot of other people who are great and support you and will be there for you when you're going through this time. And sometimes if it's something less than that, like a slightly less severe type of grief, then I guess it's kind of just like movies with my friends. And just anything that makes me happy to just kind of forget about it for the moment. But yeah.
Personally, I tend to lean on like two things. I generally like to go to the gym, honestly. It's pretty nice. Lets you get your emotions out and kind of just clear your mind, because a lot of times grief it's obviously can be very overwhelming, and it like you start to think about it too much, and it can almost become like everything you think about. You stop thinking about what you have to do next. Like, oh, I have to do if like for example, I failed my test in like bio. If I failed after studying really hard, maybe I can't even get myself to look at the next section or video, because I'm just thinking about what I did wrong and all that, and it's really counterproductive. And I feel like going to the gym is really helpful, because all you can focus on when you're working out is the gym, and it just helps you or it helps me just refocus. And the second thing I like to do a lot is I like to journal, honestly. Um, it's a habit that I picked up a couple years ago. I was definitely more consistent with it before. I'm just kind of consistent with it now. And basically, um, I think it's important with grief to not always just run away from it and let it build up. I think you have to address it at some point. Maybe it'll take you a little bit. Maybe you need some time for like for your emotional level to come down just a little bit. But eventually, I think it always has to be addressed, because if you don't, it'll just stick with you, and it'll affect you negatively. It might even come out on the way, like if you don't address your grief properly, it might come out on the way you deal with the people you like actually care about, and you might push them away. So just writing things out, kind of making sense of everything. And like always going back to the root of the issue and how I can like cope with that, and having it all in front of you kind of organizes everything, and it kind of gets it out of your mind when it's all on a piece of paper so that you can think clearly and address the next step with a lot more like with a lot more of a clear head. Yeah.
I think just like you said, like journaling is a very great coping mechanism for grief and other things, especially if you have, like for me, I'm not very good at articulating my thoughts down or like what's going wrong in my life versus what's going right. I don't really take note of that. But at night, I've been really great at just like nightly journaling for at least 10 minutes. And sometimes if I can't think of a prompt, I'll just search one on Google or Pinterest. And it's just like nice to write stuff down, like especially in handwriting too, because like I'm like the type of learning that's with hand, I forget what it's called, but doing that, it's like a very great, and I like feel better afterwards, and just like creating a little ritual each night to be more consistent and writing letters to like what you lost that day or what made you feel good. Just, I feel like it's a great stepping stone to other great coping mechanisms that could help you in the future.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think journaling is something that is it's such a great way to like heal and just like put your emotions out, especially for people who don't feel comfortable to talk to other people and just like kind of keep it within themselves between them and their journal. I think it's a really great idea. I've been trying sometimes it's like pretty difficult for me to stay consistent with it, like you guys have said, but I have like an own separate journal that's just like about being a little bit more grateful because I think that's like important. I feel like sometimes when I'm like living my daily life, it's hard for me to sometimes focus on like the positive and like if like I'm like failing a test here and there or something, like it's easy to like gravitate towards like negative feelings. So that's a journal that like I've tried to pick back up recently. But I mean, I feel like I just kind of like to talk to others. Like sometimes I just when I'm hanging out with my friends, we kind of just ask each other questions. And actually recently one of my friends asked me like if you knew you were like dying in a year, like how would you live your life differently? And I think that that really put things into perspective for me of like, I mean, I think I like spend enough time with my family because I really value them, but like just even spending even more time with my family, like reassuring them how much I love them and everything. So I think for me, it helps talking with other people versus kind of like keeping it into myself because like everyone has different like styles of like dealing with things. But I think, yeah, that's something that I do. I just like to talk to others about things, hear other people's thoughts and stories too. But in terms of like my own grieving experience and like kind of how I channeled that into like my future, like after my grandmother passed away from dementia, I've told you guys this before, but I created like an Alzheimer's organization here on campus, like a student organization. So I created that and I have been able to kind of like continue her legacy on through that organization, and that's been really rewarding. I remember one time like a couple months ago, I had to give, or not had to, I wanted to give a presentation just about my grandmother's like story and her timeline of her life. And then I kind of went into like resources for other students if they need to like talk to either like a counselor or talk to their peers, or I let them know that like I'm always here to listen to them. So yeah, that's kind of how I've channeled my grieving into like here. Like my presence here at the university. But yeah, in terms of this internship, all of us interns, all of us hosts are available to listen to anybody's caregiving stories as well. If you feel like your style is more so telling other people about your story and talking to other people about it. So we have resources like that available.
Yeah, so we loved hearing all about how you guys deal with grief. I think you guys brought up some really great points, whether it be journaling, being grateful for what you have. But I also like to pick up different hobbies, just to get my mind off of things. I think staying busy is what can help with grief. I think right after something bad happens, like a loved one dies, I think there's it's perfectly fine to like grieve right after it and as well as like be sad, but I think there's also a time for transitioning and being able to transition more efficiently, I think is like the use of different hobbies, whether it be like, I don't know, cooking, hanging out with friends, or trying something new. I think it just brings something new to your life that you could focus on. And yeah, that's kind of how I deal with grief. Our next question is, have you guys dealt with anyone dealing with like a death of a loved one, and like how did you support them through their like grieving processes? And do you have any like tips for people who are in that situation supporting someone during a grieving process?
I think that your mindset is very important, especially in times where like your life feels like it's falling apart or something is not going right. I think that having like a more positive mindset and like re-emphasizing things in your mind is very important. So like for instance, like I have had to sometimes step in to support like emotionally my mom at times where she feels like she wasn't doing enough, or my grandmother, but I just try to like remind her that like nobody's perfect. And I think personally, like I know that she did as much as she could have, and she did like way more than even I could have ever expected from her during that time. So I think it's really important to like re-emphasize to people who feel like either they didn't do enough, that like nobody is perfect, and this caregiving experience is like something so unique and like so hard to go through. And I think that it's just important to like get like make sure that they kind of like understand that they like deserve more credit than they're giving themselves. Um, I also think it's important in terms of like the grieving process to just understand and acknowledge that grieving is totally normal, and allow yourself to feel like the full cycle of things. It can be really confusing. Like I know in my personal like caregiving and grieving journey, I was really stuck on like the denial phase, which is like the first step. I was like confused. I think it had to do with like me not fully being home during like the end of my grandmother's life, but um yeah, I mean, it's such a hard thing to navigate, and it's especially hard when you're having to like kind of support other people through it. But I think that it's just important to emphasize that like grief is normal, to not like judge what they're feeling, to really just hear them out. And yeah, just like make sure that they're still prioritizing themselves and not letting like their emotions get the best of them and affect them physically. Like, life's unfortunately still has to like go on. And I think that I've always tried to like, I don't know, lift my mom up whenever she feels like any negative feelings about what she could have done better, like wishing things were different. Yeah, nobody's perfect. So I think that's important to emphasize.
Yeah, I think another key thing is like when it comes to supporting someone, I think reinforcing their feelings and like understanding how they feel, validating their feelings, as well as being emotionally intelligent and not, using your judgment. I think that's a skill that I think is hard to develop, but it's definitely possible. Being able to hold back, whether it be like your opinions or like judgments on how someone was dealing with like grief. I think that's super important to make the situation better, because obviously if they're grieving, they're in their like lowest of lows. So just being able to understand them and being open to their thoughts as well as their feelings is something that's really important. Do you guys want to add anything about how you guys like supported people during a grieving process in particular?
I think something that I really like emphasizing is that patience is kind of a key part of it. There's no like set amount of time for how long it's okay to grieve. It's really different for everyone, and sometimes it feels like it's been forever and it sucks and it never gets better. But honestly, being patient is just really important, and being able to give yourself the time to heal and not feel any sort of pressure to have to get over it is a really helpful thing that's been something that I've been thinking about. Um, but on the flip side, people also say that it's, you want to be able to have control of your life again, and you don't want it to be affecting you so severely. So I think there's a balance between making sure that it's not negatively affecting you for too long, I guess, and that you're learning something from the process. But yeah, I think just knowing that it might take a while, or a long time is something that people tell me and something that I try to tell other people too.
Right. So you guys brought up some really great points, a lot of advice and experiences. So what advice do you have for people dealing with grief in professional settings? Like I know our preceptor Denise Brown talked about looking at the benefits you have at work as well as like paid time off, whether it be a bereavement. So I know those are like a few resources. Do you guys have any other like advice you could give for like professionals working in the workforce that have been dealing with grief and like any solutions you would give to them?
I think like we've mentioned before, I think journaling either like I feel like journaling is a great way for people who kind of want to more like internally heal or deal from things. That's a great example of something. Just like in general, even just like talking to other people about it. I mean, there's many like therapists or counselors or like other resources or people that you can talk to, even if you want to lean on a loved one. But if it's too difficult, you can obviously gear towards more like a therapist figure. But I think it's important to like take care of yourself, take care of your physical health. Like Haroon said, going to the gym could help many people. I think that even if you don't want to kind of like write or talk about things. You can explore your hobbies, do things that make you feel good. You can express whatever you're feeling through other forms of like art or music or dance or whatever like hobbies that you want to like continue. I think that also like sharing memories is a great idea too. Like share pictures or you can just kind of like honor somebody's legacy in a great way. But in terms of like specifically somebody like working in a new environment, I think that it's important to like if you have like a higher up like a boss to really communicate with them openly just like what you're dealing with and going through. And if you like need some time off, I know it's pretty difficult when it comes to like real world work like systems where like you don't really have a lot of time off, but maybe and the time that you do have off like at night or like hopefully at night you can just like do some of the things that I said like journal or just try to like express yourselves in different ways or just keep up with like your normal hobbies but yeah, I think it's important to just stay in communication with everyone in your life, let them know what you're going through and don't fall like in your own hole and like keep everything completely to yourself. What tips would you guys give, I guess?
I think you mentioned a lot of great ones. And I'd say something that I'd add is just like visit and make finding out like local community, if it's whether it's online or in person. There's like grief support groups or there's counseling available, I know. But for like the not like the more non-affordable options, it can be hard for some people to access those. But I'd say I know there's like Facebook groups that people join to talk about certain stuff and I'd say just talking to other people in similar situations definitely helps you feel more heard in that kind of area. So that's my advice I would give.
Awesome, awesome. I feel like you guys brought up some really great points, experiences, as well as advice from your own experiences, as well as what you would give to other people dealing with grief. But I think we'll wrap it up for today. That's it for today's episode. If you found this helpful, make sure to follow Life in Motion podcast and share it with a friend who might be interested. We'll be back soon with another episode, which releases at 5 p.m. on every Friday. But thank you for listening.
Thank you to everyone listening. Hope you found this really helpful. And we all wish you the best of luck on your grieving process. Just try to acknowledge it, know that it's normal, know that no grieving process is perfect. It's not linear, it's a emotional roller coaster. There's days you'll feel better than others. So just want to leave everybody with that last message. But thank you to everyone who's tuning in. And um, we all were so excited to inform you guys on just like what our thoughts and our stories and our little pieces of advice. So hope everyone found it helpful. Thank you for tuning in.
All right, thank you
Thank you
guys.
guys.